My son's wife smiled sweetly at her parents, then turned to me and said, "She's basically the maid here." My chest tightened, but I didn't shout. I simply reached into my purse, pulled out the house keys, and placed them in her hand. "Good luck paying the mortgage now," I told her. The room froze. Her smile cracked. And in that silence, I knew a line had been crossed that could never be undone. I'm Marjorie, a mother who gave everything to her family only to be treated like a burden in my own home. I'm about to share something close to my heart. But before I do, can you say hi in the comments or tell me where you're from? I love hearing how far my story reach. It's always good to know I'm not alone in this. Thank you. And now, let me tell you everything. And if my story touches you, please consider subscribing. It helps me keep sharing and reminds me that my voice still matters. The rain had just started to fall, tapping softly against the wide windows that looked out on the line of oak trees bending over Live Oak Street. The house smelled of sage and roasted chicken, warm and comforting, the kind of meal I had been making for years to anchor a family that seemed harder and harder to hold together. At 58, a widow for nearly a decade, I had grown used to my routines. Dinner at 6, one glass of wine, the dishes washed and stacked neatly before bed. But routines are fragile things. Orion and Celine had moved back in 3 weeks earlier, carrying more boxes than made sense for a temporary stay. I told myself I was glad to have the company. That was before the question started. That night, the three of us sat around the oak table, my son's shoulders hunched as he picked at his food, his voice low and uncertain. "Mom, I know you're worried, but the layoffs weren't my fault. They cut half the department." He sounded rehearsed, weary of explaining himself. Celine, ever quick, slid her hand over his and smiled tightly. "Orion doesn't need to keep defending himself. Times are tough, but at least we're safe here with you." Her eyes flicked around the room as if memorizing its corners, its secrets. I carved another piece of chicken, nodding without reply. My years as an insurance investigator had taught me how to listen more than talk. Celine's tone was light, but her rhythm gave her away. Her fingers tapped a steady beat against the table whenever she mentioned money. She steered the conversation with ease, asking if I had updated my will, if the house was fully insured, if I had thought about extra security since I was living all alone in such a big place. "I've managed fine for 15 years, I said, keeping my voice mild. "Savannah isn't the crime capital some folks imagine." She laughed, but her eyes didn't. Still, a safe would help, right, just in case. She tilted her head. "Is it one of those with a code or the kind you open with a key?" I looked down at my plate, letting the question hang. "Why do you ask?" "Oh, no reason." Her smile sharpened. "Just curious." I could feel Orion shifting uncomfortably, trying to change the subject, but I wasn't listening to him anymore. I was listening to her, to the places between her words. Earlier that day, Orion had asked, almost offhand, if I was sleeping well. Before I could answer, Celine leaned in with a suggestion. "One pill can help you sleep right through the night." The comment lodged itself in my mind like a burr. When I rose to clear the table, I noticed something strange. My bedroom door at the top of the stairs was open, just a sliver to finger widths, though I was certain I had closed it. I climbed quietly and saw the second drawer of my dresser sticking out ever so slightly, a corner of a manila folder peeking like a tongue. My pulse thudded. I closed it gently, no sign of disturbance on my face when I returned downstairs. Later, after they had gone to bed, I slid the key from its taped place under the drawer and tucked it into the pocket of my kitchen apron. In the drawer, I left nothing but a folded scrap of paper. On it, in neat block letters, I had written a single word, "Don't." As I hung the apron on its hook, I felt the house shift around me. This was no longer a home filled with warmth. It had become a stage, and I was preparing the set for a play I hadn't agreed to perform. That night, the rain thickened, dripping steadily from the branches outside. At exactly 11:47, I heard it, the creak of a floorboard below, the heavy tread of steps not meant to be heard. I sat up in bed listening. The house had an old system of vents that carried sound in odd ways, and I knew how to use them. Quietly, I pressed my ear to the narrow grate near the baseboard. Through it came the muffled but distinct murmur of Seleni's voice. "Tomorrow night, when Orion's stuck in his Zoom call, she'll be out cold by then." The keys in the second drawer. I steadied my breathing-pressed record on my phone and watched the seconds tick by. Evidence. Always gather evidence. When the call ended, I labeled the file S01 and slipped the phone under my pillow. My heart was hammering, but not from fear, from clarity. In the morning, I made coffee as usual, slid a plate of eggs across the table, and asked Orion casually if he had checked the bank notifications lately. His face flickered guilty before he stammered, "Selene handles all that." She gave me a bright smile. I said nothing, only filed the detail away in the ledger of my mind. By afternoon, I had a plan. I moved the real safe key to a bag of flour in the kitchen drawer, clipped beneath the paper sack, where no one would think to look. In its place, I left a duplicate key, an old luggage key, close enough in shape to fool a hurried hand. Then I set the trap. In town, I had bought a confetti cannon at the party store on Abercorn Street, the kind meant to spray paper for baby showers. I dismantled it carefully at my workbench, replaced the confetti with ultra-fine silver and gold glitter, and wired it to trigger when the drawer was opened deep enough to reach where the real key had once been taped. It took several tests, a wooden spoon standing in for greedy fingers, before I was satisfied. The explosion was spectacular, a shimmering cloud that clung to everything. I placed the device inside, reset the drawer, and turned to the second part of my plan. At Best Buy, I'd bought a miniature camera no bigger than a deck of cards, with night vision and motion detection. Nestled among books on my nightstand, it gave a perfect angle of the dresser and the door, invisible unless you knew where to look. As I adjusted the drawer, I noticed something odd. A faint smear of powder along the edge, pale under the lamp. I touched it, rubbed it between my fingers. It caught the light with a faint green shimmer. Not dust, not flour, ground pills, sleeping medication crushed fine. My breath tightened. She had already tried, already tested how much it would take to make me drowsy, forgetful. A story about the old woman losing her memory could be powerful in court if she ever wanted to claim I was incompetent. I wiped the powder into a tissue and sealed it in a plastic bag. Another piece of evidence. Back in the bedroom, I slipped a new note into the drawer. This one did not say "don't." In block letters, it read, "Smile for the camera." I closed the drawer gently, set the room back to perfect order, and sat on the edge of the bed. The rain still whispered against the windows. Somewhere down the hall, Selene laughed lightly at something on the television. I knew what she thought, that I was slow, that age had dulled my instincts. But she had forgotten that my life's work had been reading people who lied for a living. She thought she was invisible. Soon she would learn what it felt like to be watched. And when the moment came, there would be no mistaking it. Some secrets explode in silence. Hers would explode in glitter. The skies over Forsyth Park were the color of wet ash that late afternoon. We took a walk, the kind Selene suggested for everyone's mental health, but I could feel her pulse quicken beside me. Not from exertion, but anticipation. I knew the clock ticking behind her polished smile. Every gesture was rehearsed, every glance timed. She laughed lightly when Orion reached for her hand, but I watched her eyes. They flicked toward her phone. She was waiting for nightfall. Back at the house, I made sure my voice carried as I hung my sweater near the stairs. "I'll be turning in early tonight. Been feeling the rain in my bones. Don't come calling unless it's urgent." Selene smiled too fast. "Of course. Rest is the best medicine." I went upstairs, closed the door, just loud enough to be heard turned on the lamp by the bed, and laid out the props. The bottle of sleep aid I kept near the nightstand was switched with a melatonin supplement. I made sure to swallow one slowly, visibly in front of both of them before retreating. The kind of details Selene would catalog as she waited. The kind she'd trust. 2. 18 a.m. The door creaked open. The motion sensor on the camera clicked on with a near-silent hum. There she was, neutral gloves, hair pulled back, slippers silent on the wood floor. She moved like someone used to hiding. Her eyes darted to the dresser, then the closet. She moved straight to the second drawer. The moment her fingers slipped in and pulled, she paused. Inside a single key, familiar but not the right one, and a small manila envelope. She hesitated just for a breath, then opened it. First, a printed screenshot of a gambling site with her username timestamp transactions. Second, a bank statement listing payday loans, short-term debt balances in red. Her name printed at the top, clear and undeniable. Third, a small slip of paper with only one line typed in bold. Smile for the camera on the bookshelf. Her body froze. Reflexively, her eyes jerked up straight into the lens, hidden between Hemingway and an old set of legal codes. Pop. The glitter burst like a firework. Silver and gold rained down over her head, catching the lamplight like shards of shame. It clung to her gloves, her lashes the neckline of her sweatshirt. A beat later, Orion's voice rang from the next room. What was that? I sat up in bed as if startled, flicked on the overhead light and called out, "What's going on out there?" She turned toward me, caught mid-motion, the fake key still pinched between her thumb and finger. It was... She stammered, eyes wide, trying to rub glitter from her face. Behind her, Orion appeared in the doorway, his hair mussed, his jaw slack. The glitter marked a perfect path from the drawer to her footprints. I pointed to the papers in her trembling hand. That belongs to who exactly? No one answered. The room held its breath. I looked at both of them and said evenly, "Tomorrow, I think we should listen to a few recordings together." And with that, I closed the drawer on the night. The sun rose crisp and golden over Savannah, filtering through the lace curtains into the sitting room. I had already brewed coffee and arranged a plate of scones. The mood was misleadingly serene, like a courtroom staged inside a kitchen. Selene entered first, her face scrubbed clean but still dusted with shimmer. She hadn't managed to wash out. Orion followed, his jaw tight. I picked up my phone, opened the Voice Memos app, and hit play. The room filled with her voice. Tomorrow night? When Orion's on Zoom, she'll be out cold by then. The key's in the second drawer. The room fell so quiet I could hear the soft buzz of the refrigerator motor behind us. Orion blinked. "That's you, Selene." Selene froze, then burst into tears. That was a joke. It was a joke, Orion. I was talking to my friend Cassie, venting. You know how I talk when I'm frustrated. We laugh about stuff. It wasn't real. I didn't speak. I placed the printed documents gently onto the table. Her eyes locked onto the debt records. She snatched them before Orion could read too far and tore them in half. "Why are you doing this to me?" she shrieked, her voice breaking. "You're twisting everything you want to make me look like the bad one." I sipped my coffee calmly. I had 6 copies on my encrypted drive, too, already backed up in the cloud. She pointed a shaking finger at me. "She's manipulating us. She wants you to hate me, Orion. She's trying to break our marriage." Orion turned to me, uncertainty darkening his features. I could see the flicker behind his eyes. Doubt was a wound that bled slowly. I folded my hands. "I can send the recording to our family attorney if you'd like. Let him decide what it sounds like." Selene's face drained of color. She swallowed her anger like poison. "You're paranoid," she hissed. "You want control over everything. You want him to yourself." I didn't flinch. I didn't raise my voice. I just stood, smoothed the tablecloth, and said, "Tonight pick the side of the room you want to stand on." Then I turned and walked back to my room, leaving behind a living room caught in the wake of truths too loud to ignore. The war had no longer just begun. It had chosen its battlefield. Me, her, and the man in the middle who still believed there could be peace. The sun bore down heavily on the back porch as I brought in the mail from the tin box by the white picket gate. Among catalogs and utility bills was a thick envelope addressed not just to Celine, but to Orion and Celine Hart Quinn. The return label read Summit Financial Recovery Group. I slid it open with the edge of the gardening spade still in my hand. The paper inside was a debt collection notice, $47,000 due immediately. My breath caught. I read every line twice, then a third time. Celine had taken out a consolidated loan using both their names. I sat on the porch bench and stared at the crepe myrtle leaves fluttering in the heat, trying to still the storm inside me. When Orion came out for lemonade, I slipped the paper beside him and asked softly, "Did you sign anything lately? Anything in both your names?" He blinked, then looked away. She said it was a simple guarantor form, just to lower the interest rate. She said it wasn't binding unless she defaulted. "Did you read it?" I asked. His silence was answer enough. She said she'd pay it off by selling some jewelry her grandmother left her. He added eyes on the table. "But she hasn't." I didn't press. I wanted to believe her. That's when I knew he wasn't just complicit, he was ensnared. Celine had wrapped him in the same web, tugging gently with promises and guilt until he was tangled too deep to climb out clean. Later that afternoon, while refilling the bird feeder, I heard the ring of Celine's phone from the open kitchen window. Her voice was sharp, more businesslike than I'd ever heard. Then came the man's voice, gruff, impatient. 3 days, or we bring it to her doorstep. I don't care how old she is. 3 days, so this wasn't just deception. It was danger, and it was already inside my house. That night, I bolted every door, drew every blind. In the bathroom mirror, I stared at my reflection-creased eyes, silver hair, and the face of a woman people assumed would never fight back. If I stay silent, I said out loud, this house becomes a battlefield. I reached for the file folder hidden behind the towels. The next move wouldn't be quiet. It would be mine. Rain hammered the tin roof as the clock edged toward 9:00. Inside, the lights flickered twice before steadying. Storms in Savannah were nothing new, but tonight the air carried a different weight, like the final inhale before something snapped. I was sitting in the living room sorting papers when Celine appeared in the doorway with a tray, tea lemon slices, and a warm expression that looked borrowed. She sat beside me, too close. "You know," she began, voice dipped in sugar, "you've done so much. Maybe it's time to let us help a little." I raised an eyebrow. "I mean, with the safe, the account," she continued. "You shouldn't worry about all that anymore. Orion and I could manage it for you. Lighten the load." The camera hidden in the floral arrangement behind us blinked red, every word recorded. She reached into her sweater pocket and pulled out a small amber bottle. "I brought this for you," she said, unscrewing the cap. "Just one before bed. You'll sleep like a baby." I didn't touch it. I recognized the brand, the same one that left that fine blue residue in the drawer. "No thank you," I said evenly. The smile vanished. Her voice dropped an octave. "You're making this harder than it needs to be. Don't you see this isn't just about you anymore? You're hurting Orion, and others don't forget debts." For the first time, she didn't veil the threat. Before I could answer, Orion's footsteps echoed down the hall. He stopped mid-step, clearly catching the tail of her last sentence. Celine turned quickly, her voice instantly softer. "I was just saying I worry about her health, that's all. Stress at her age, it can be serious." Orion looked between us, unsure. His face held the strain of someone trying to hold two truths at once and failing. I rose, walked to the credenza, and laid down the copy of the debt letter. Then explain this: a $47,000 loan. Your name, his name, and his signature. Explain that. Orion walked over, skimmed the page, and went still. His fingers hovered above the line where his name was signed. Celine lost control. "Don't act like this is a surprise." "You were part of it," she snapped. "You didn't even read it, remember." Don't make me the villain now just because she's spinning stories." Her voice cracked into something ugly. "You think just because you're old, everyone should bow to you. People believe your sweet little act, but they don't live with you. You don't get to control everything." I didn't flinch. "Tomorrow," I said clearly, "everything comes into the light. Not just within these walls." I turned, picked up my folder, and walked upstairs. Inside my room, I placed the flash drive beside the stack of printed documents. The emails had already been sent to our family lawyer with backups to 2 safe accounts. Celine wanted a war. She would have it. The rain had passed, leaving a wet gleam on the windows and the smell of damp oak in the air. The lights flickered back on just after midnight, casting a golden sheen over the quiet house. I stood at the top of the stairs for a long moment, then called down, calm and clear. "Celine. Orion. Can I see you both in the living room?" They came in slowly, Orion rubbing sleep from his eyes. Celine already wary, her hair damp, the faint shimmer of glitter still clinging to her collar from the night before. I gestured toward the couch. "There's something we need to listen to." I tapped the file on my phone and let the new recording play. Celine's voice, flat businesslike. "The key's in the second drawer. I'll get it tonight." A man's voice, low and hard. "You get in. Open the safe. Then disappear." Orion sat bolt upright. He looked at her as if seeing her for the first time. "What is that?" Celine laughed, sharp and defensive. "That's fake. It's not me. You think I cut her off. Reached for the remote. On the screen came the video from the bookshelf camera. The timestamp read 2:18 a.m. Celine in the dark, slipping in, wearing nitrile gloves. The drawer opens. Her hand reaches. The envelope, the false key. The glitter explosion, sudden and bright. In the footage, she flinches and looks straight at the camera. There was no denying it. She stood. "Okay, fine. But that doesn't mean what you think. I was testing you. I wanted to see if you trusted me enough to hide something real. I wasn't going to take anything I didn't speak. I simply placed the debt letter on the table." She stared at it like it was a loaded gun. "I was going to tell you." Orion finally found his voice. "Did you use my name on that loan? Did you forge my signature?" She didn't answer, just looked at him, then shouted, "You're my husband. You're supposed to stand with me." Orion recoiled. "You turned our marriage into a trap." Celine moved to him, but he stepped back. I took a slow breath and pulled the final file from the folder. These recordings, these documents, they've all been sent to my attorney. If you try anything else by morning, the police will have everything. Celine froze. For the first time, truly, she understood she'd lost. There was no rebuttal, no escape, no one left to charm. Orion bowed his head into his hands. His voice cracked. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I let this get so far." I placed a hand gently on his shoulder. "No, this isn't your fault. The mistake was believing love couldn't be used as a weapon." Celine said nothing. She stood in the corner like a ghost, the glitter still clinging to her shirt and hair, undeniable, unforgettable. The mark of what she'd done. The mark of who she'd become. The morning air in Savannah was crisp, unusually clear after the storm. I poured coffee slowly into the chipped mug with blue violets. Outside, the yard glistened in the sun. Footsteps behind me. Celine came down the stairs. Her overnight bag packed, her eyes hollow. Orion stood near the dining table, watching her without expression. She moved quietly, wordlessly, gathering her things. I didn't stop her. Only when she reached for her keys did I speak, leave the house key on the table. She paused, then set it down beside the empty sugar bowl. One last glance toward Orion. He didn't meet her eyes. The door opened. The car engine started. The tires whispered down the street. And then silence. I sat down and opened the envelope from my lawyer. Inside a short letter, "All materials received. You are legally protected from any claims or defamation. You retain all rights and leverage to proceed as you see fit." I closed it and exhaled. From across the room, Orion said softly, I thought I'd lost everything, but I think I just escaped. I walked over, wrapped him in my arms. Sometimes I said losing is the only way to find freedom again. 3 months passed. Orion got a job with a local nonprofit helping rebuild community gardens. He stayed in the guest room. At night, we sat on the porch, sharing tea and silence. This house, once tense, once hollow, now felt warm again. That morning, I opened the paper and scanned the city column. A headline tucked in the corner caught my eye: Spike in identity fraud and marital loan scams across Georgia. I stared at it a long time, then closed the page. A knock at the door. Mrs. Langston from across the street, holding her dog on a leash and grinning. "I heard about your glitter trap. Mind helping me set up a security system? You've clearly got a gift." I laughed gently. Justice doesn't always have to feel heavy. Sometimes it just sparkles a little. I made another cup of coffee, looked out at the oak trees. Sunlight danced through their branches, painting soft patterns on the floor. There were no more lies in this house, no more shadows behind drawers, no more whispered threats or hidden bottles. There was quiet, there was peace, and there was home. And